Hello, Rob Lang here with At Home Kansas, and there's something new in Dodge, well, in Kansas, and we have a NAR settlement that has changed the way buyers are now allowed to see houses. And the Department of Justice has given some written rulings and orders for agents to follow. They felt that before that commissions were not negotiated, were not able to be negotiated on the part of the seller properly, that the seller was paying for the buyer agent, and so now it needs to be negotiated between the seller and the listing agent for listing the house, and then the payment for the buyer agent needs to be negotiated between the buyer and the buyer agent that they select. As a buyer agent, it's something to where I have a buyer agency agreement that you can review, ask questions, consult an attorney, but it has to have a start date, has to have an end date, has to give the area or the name of the specific property that you wish to go see, and it has to be listing the amount of compensation that I, as a buyer agent, am to receive either by you paying outside of closing, or to request it be a seller concession to where it's included in the contract, just the same as if you were asking for the seller to provide a new dishwasher and an air conditioner prior to closing. It would be stated as seller concession to the buyer in the amount of X dollars, and that amount would cover the buyer agent commission that you agree on. However, you have to agree on that prior to the seeing of any house. So that has to be in writing, and that buyer agency agreement is something to where once you sign that, you're working with that buyer agent for the fee described, and everything is laid out on the table as to what house or houses it is going to cover, when it starts as an agreement and when it ends as an agreement. So that's something you negotiate with me as a buyer agent. You do have an alternative to where you can go and ask the listing agent to show you the house. They are going to, possibly ask for a showing fee because they're only getting paid by the seller to list the house, market the house. They are not getting paid for doing all the buyer agents that are out there for doing their work. There's several things that the buyer agent does for you. They schedule the showing, they schedule the inspections, they write up the contract, they do your closing, they verify with the lender that if anything is needed to be able to get that done so that you're able to purchase your house and close on your house that you wish to buy. Working with the listing agent, they're not allowed to advise you because they represent the exclusive needs, and that is of the seller alone. They cannot advise two parties in the state of Kansas. That's called dual agency, and that's not something that the state of Kansas allows. So they could, for a fee, show you a house. They could, for a fee, write up a contract for you. That would all be in the seller's favor because that's who they're required by law to represent. They could open the door for you for your inspections, which they would be required to stay there for. Again, for a fee for all of these things because they're not going to work for free. So it's up to you whether you want to have the listing agent do those things for you, who represents the best interests of the seller, or whether you want to have a buyer agent who represents your best interests. Now, that's again, totally up to you. I would suggest that you're going to be a lot better off in the sense that I have talked more buyers out of buying a house because of things that I noticed that would cause them problems on down the road, deficiencies, or I've noticed termites in a house that the buyers weren't aware were there. Several different things, because I'm looking out for your best interest as being a buyer agent once I'm signed to do that for you. So that is really the first step that has to be addressed at this point because of the NAR settlement on the Barnett case, which was a settlement that stated that commissions were negotiable before. They're now going to be negotiated by the buyer with their buyer agent in writing prior to seeing any houses. So that's something that's new, and if you need more explanation, I'd be happy to go through that with you, run through various scenarios with you. Yet I hope that this gives you a good enough idea to know that you do need representation and that you can ask for the payment of my professional services fee to be included in the contract. You have the right to have it be included in the loan, or you can pay for my services outside of the closing. Several ways of handling that, and we can go through with that once you write it up and ask you which one you prefer to use. If you need it to be included in your monthly payment in the loan, we'll show you how to do that. If you want to ask the seller to provide closing costs or a seller concession to the buyer for the amount of the buyer agent commission, that can be done as well. So the key thing is, before you go see a house, you'll want to make sure that you talk with an agent and choose them to best represent your interests. Otherwise, everything that you say, every facial expression you make, the vehicle that you drive up in, all that information is going to be taken to the seller, and the seller is going to know how interested you are in the house, and that's going to come from the listing agent if you ask the listing agent to show you the house. I hope this is helpful. As always, you can contact me at my personal cell, 785-393-2274. This is Rob Lang with At Home Kansas. Thank you for listening.